Definitely for our members who are present here, we will put her detailed biodata on our Usha email ID. Let me tell you that she has been the former Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India, which we are all aware of. She was in charge of the key departments in RBI during the liberalization of financial sector in India. During her tenure, she represented RBI on the Basel Committee. After retirement, she has been the first director of CAFREL, the Center for Research and Excellence. She was member of Bimal Jalan panel, first chairman of the Financial Benchmark India Limited, and she is the trustee of Indian Cancer Society and trustee in charge of its Cancer Cure Fund. I think with this brief biodata, I now introduce you our chairperson for this session, Madhu Pahwa. She has teaching experience at all levels from 1984 to 2008. She is executive committee member of Usha Mumbai, and she has been elected as EC member for the period 2021 to 2023. Our rapporteur today is Prabha Patil. She is from Gokhale College, MA MPhil in Linguistics, PhD in British Literature. She has teaching experience of 28 years at UG and PG level. She has published e-book and Helen Dunmore's novel translated in European languages. 32 papers have been published by her. I now request Usha Thorat Madam to present her paper.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anuradha. Very nice of you to invite me and introduce me. I am happy that we have a person who's quite knowledgeable chairing this session. I thank Deepa Patil and Dhanashri Patil also for extending this invitation to your conference today. And the topic I have sort of chosen is natural resources management and implications for rural women. I have neither published any papers, nor have I written any books, nor do I have any doctorates or anything like that. But it's just practical experience. And more recently, one part of the introduction which I would like to add is that I'm chairing an organization called Foundation for Ecological Security, which works with rural communities for restoration of the environment and also promote livelihoods so that there is social economic welfare.
Usha Madam, can the voice is soft? Can you hold the?
Yeah, I can do one more thing. I can probably link myself to the audio.
Laptop?
1 second. It is already on the laptop.
Or you can increase the volume, I think. Earphones.
No, I'll just connect it to the audio. I'll just connect it to the audio.
Okay.
Is it better now? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, sure.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm not able to hear you. But I suppose
Yes, we can hear you properly now.
Okay, thank you. So, I just thought I'll, add that bit about the organization with which I've been involved, which gives me a little more insight into the issues of natural resource management in the rural areas. So I just also wanted to know whether there is an ability to share the screen on this Google Meet. If it's not there, I'm fine. Madam Anuradha?
You can, yes, there is a facility of sharing the screen, madam.
Because I'm not familiar with this, you see.
Dangat sir, can you please guide?
Okay, I'll take it later. Yeah, that screen is there. Okay. So the first thing which I wanted to make is that the kind of development model that the world has embarked upon after the Industrial Revolution, and more particularly in the 20th century, is a take, make, waste model based on a completely consumption, consumerist driven economic growth, which is aspirational for people all over the world. And with the kind of developments that have happened in the internet, Google, the aspirations actually just become even more due to social media and various other ways in which the internet has pervaded into our lives. So this take, make, waste model, which is based on consumption, has a lot of impact on the natural resources. And that has a huge implication for economies, for developing economies, for the poor, and especially for women amongst the poor. So the first consequence of all this is an overuse of natural resources, thereby depleting them, degrading them, and it is not a limitless resource. Nature always heals itself, treated with respect. But if one overuses nature, then there'll be so much depletion that afterwards it's just not available to anybody. Whether it is groundwater, or whether it is clean air, or whether it is any other services that nature does provide man. But when we push nature, then the whole thing becomes unsustainable. And this is one of the huge impacts we are seeing because of the model of development. The second point is the degraded, depleted, and polluted environment uh, definitely affects all services which one used to consider as free. Clean air to breathe was considered as free. Good water to drink was considered as free. Now, all these things are now becoming a scarce commodity. So these services like air, soil, now soil, we always felt that as long as there was sunshine and there is good air and good water, and all you garden club and other, people know about it, you will always have something to eat. But now soil is also being degraded. The moisture content in the soil nutrients, the biomasses, everything is getting depleted. And that is all because of the model of development that we have embarked upon. Some of you may be familiar with, the services such as pollination and other services which are part of biodiversity services. Now, in organisms, the evolution of plants and organisms which fight nature, which fight diseases, all these are part of what one calls ecosystem services. And the environment, the degraded, depleted, polluted environment, and overuse has actually deprived us, reduced the quality of many of these ecosystem services that we used to be take for granted. And a good example is about the apples in Himachal, because of the fact that pollination has gone down so much, and therefore there is a complete loss of productivity and loss of the innate disease resistant strength of the quality of these. And so therefore you have to find new ways, new chemicals, and then we create more and more problems. The third issue is the excessive use of fossil fuels for energy, leading to climate change and all the disastrous consequences, some of which we know and some of which we don't even know. So this has also led to huge problems, and the impact of that, some of which we know. We know that it is leading to extreme climatic events. It is leading to unprecedented drought. It is leading to unprecedented rain and floods. And such events are increasing day by day. And these such events have even more of an impact when people are living in very low coastal areas, or very areas where they are very prone. And India is a very, very vulnerable country. And the maximum population, now we say 65% of the population are living in rural areas. And a large part of the women are really in rural areas because there's a huge migration into cities by the menfolk. So this is impacting women. This is impacting the women who are, cultivating our land, who are doing most of the services like wood cutting, grazing, collecting water, collecting fuel. So this has a huge impact on the women, especially in the rural areas. The fourth aspect of the economic model of development that we have chosen, the world has chosen, is the way we are generating waste, which is completely, totally, largely non-recyclable. And this has a huge impact on the planet, especially the oceans. So what all this has meant, all these four things, has meant that the world's population today and the future generations is far more insecure in terms of basic needs such as water, food, energy, and health. So it's clear that the present rate of climate change and the loss of biodiversity has already led and will continue to lead to severe calamities and catastrophes. Also, we have heard about, the zootonic events like COVID-19. It can also happen with more frequent occurrence as conflict between man and animal increases and more of the natural habitat is invaded into by man. So the impact of man or disregarding nature is absolutely unequal. The developed countries are more affected because they are aspiring for the same consumption led model similar to the developed countries. And then the impact of climate change is putting curbs on these countries to fulfill their aspirations. We talk about net zero concept for all countries. So this is very inequitable. Within the developing countries, the poor are more affected. The people with less land holding are more affected. And within the poor, the women are at more risk. And because it is in lot of inequality. So this is how I come to my topic today. The impact of the way in which natural resources are owned, allocated, and managed on the economic and social welfare of women in the rural areas, land being clearly the most important natural resource in this context. Today, more than 400 million women, there are women farmers, but only 15% are landholders. In the Indian context, 4 out of 5 women workers in rural India are engaged in agriculture, but only 13% of them are landholders. There are a lot of studies which show that only 2% of the women own only 2% of the total land. Although by law, women have a right to land, there are huge number of customs and societal norms which actually hinder women's ownership or access to land, and that thereby it also undermines women's empowerment. Now, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, if women farmers had equal access to resources, credit, equipment, new technologies, yields could increase by 30% and countries to experience a growth in agriculture. But land ownership and rights are not the only place where women face disadvantages. Like I mentioned, despite legal provisions, these rights are not recognized due to discriminatory norms and customs. And in some cases where the women exercise these rights, they're unable to leverage those to exercise other entitlements. And one thing which I was quite familiar with when I was in the Reserve Bank is that even though the land was there in their name, the banks would very often want the husbands to come and guarantee the loans which the women were raising. So even credit and formal access to formal credit, these things also women get disadvantaged. The gender roles mostly lead to women performing most of the caregiving work, the household chores, the rearing the livestock, collecting of forest produce, agriculture operations, collecting water, and they have very limited or no role in decision making. And there's very little appreciation of the labor, the capacities, since many of these activities cannot be monetized. The smaller and smaller land holding and degradation of soil quality and the moisture of land due to the impact of whatever I've been talking about earlier increases the drudgery. So getting clean drinking water becomes more of an effort. Collecting for firewood becomes more of an effort. And all these initiatives often fail to take into account a differentiated approach for ensuring women have equal rights and equal space in their efforts. The use of energy. Now, energy has also got a huge gender aspect to it. The first challenge arises because of the gender disaggregation of the consumption patterns. A quantitative account, there's been a study by Srilata Batliwala, where how women share through a description of rural energy consumption patterns. The results show that the women work more hours than the men. They perform the backbreaking tasks that and they are displaced by agricultural mechanization. The energy output input balance is aggravated, that they also eat for last and they eat least. and therefore they less consume less energy, and it also results in negative health impacts. So the scarcity of energy in rural areas has definitely social and gender aspects, and it requires interventions to increase the quality of our life. Fifthly, as gatherers of produce, especially forest produce, women also are highly susceptible to exploitation and violence, and they also bear the brunt of being caught in human-wildlife conflict. Sixth, the restriction on their time, their physical mobility, their agency to speak publicly, participate in decision-making forums, their access to limited information, entitlements, and economic opportunities have also created a disadvantageous situation. Now, the voices of women, and I remember, and I heard the earlier speaker referring to it, the voices of rural women as those having the knowledge and the capacities as preservers of biodiversity, as protector of traditional rural practices of the forest. These remain unheard when policies and programs are being framed. These voices are unheard. At the policy-making practitioners, as well as the organizations, the gender biases are actually reproduced. They lack an approach in gender equality. It actually results in marginalization in decision making and also an inequitable benefit share. So there are all these problems, which is on account of the nature of the society, nature of the relationships that we have, both social and economic relations, and they start getting treated as a beneficiary, not as an agent of change. So these things uh, are really some of the impacts of the social economic factors. Now, I just wanted to share a slide. Mm, sorry. Um, uh, can somebody let me know whether you're able to see this?
Yes, it is visible. You can just make
Uh,
it full. Right.
are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this diagram actually gives the whatever I have talked about, the governance gap, the ownership of land and water, biodiversity and environment, water and agriculture, energy and mining. So how this whole uh, inequality really works is very clearly shown in this slide. So now the approach that one has had, what is the approach that one can follow then going forward? Obviously, that's the next question that we need to ask. Ela Bhatt uh, feels that the only way forward is the Khadi way. She feels there is no reform that will work for the betterment of India's economy, nor its citizens, if the reforms are not more and more aligned to the Khadi way, where there is a local ownership of means of production and it's based on a broad economic democracy. When she says khadi, she does not mean khadi as a cloth. Khadi as a concept, that it is based on local ownership of means of production. It leads to a local the it will lead, like for example, backyard fruits, rooftop vegetables, rain harvested, recycled biomass, recycling. The whole distance between the producer and the user, between the producer and the raw material, to get reduced. And these measures have been known for a long time, but we have not really put our force behind these measures. And that is the way that she recommends. Now, sorry, are you able to see my slide?
No.
No?
Yes, now it is.
No.
It is visible. It is visible.
Which one are you seeing? I can't make out.
Again, it went.
Okay, I'm going to stop presenting and start presenting again. Are you able to see anything?
Dark, madam. The
Huh?
screen is dark.
It's dark. I don't know why. Why is that? Oh God. Stop presenting. Let me take it out for the. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Huh? Not able to see. Why is it dark? Okay, some mistake. Anyway, doesn't matter. Uh, so the other thing which I thought I should like to share with you is what do we mean by, and this is the related to the organization I'm involved in, which is called the Foundation for Ecological Security, where we work with commons. Now, commons are
Madam,
lands which don't belong to anybody. It does belong to the private.
madam, a
sector, it
little
doesn't-
louder, please.
Yeah. Commons. Can you hear me now? Able to hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
If you don't say yes, how will I know? So are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Madam, can you start your presentation on a slideshow? You can try that because the earlier speaker had a problem. Then she started on slideshow and we were able to see it.
okay. Are you able to see?
No, earlier speaker had that problem. So she put it on slideshow and then we were able to see it. Your presentation. हे काय करपलं काय? Yes. Yes, yes, done.
Okay.
Right.
So commons are referred to those lands which are like grassland, patare land, plateau land, water bodies,
45.
forests, fringes of
तुला
forests,
पाच
which are
मिनिटं
not
द्यायलाच
part of
पाहिजे.
forests but fringes of forests. So these lands, there are 205 million acres of such land in India, and 350 million rural poor depend on these forests and pastures. And 40 to 60% of the annual earnings of tribals, especially tribal women, is from the collection and sale of non-timber forest produce. And there are social, political, and social and cultural spaces of other women and marginalized groups. So the core model that the Foundation for Ecological Security follows is to first try and secure the community's rights over these commons. There has been a Supreme Court judgment. The governments, the state governments, to respect these common land rights. It could be community forest rights, but it could be just common land rights which people like a great farm, these herds, goats, herds, sheep, shepherds. They have been using for years certain grazing lands. Now, the law of this country says that they will continue to have rights over those lands. So what this foundation is doing is to securing those community land rights and then trying to facilitate a participative, inclusive management of those communities, what we call commons, and take an action and then make available access to resources and finance for restoration of that land. So whether it could be limited grazing. So let me give you an example. And I don't want to take much more of your time because I think I'm already overstepping. So we visited one Aravali foothills where water is a serious problem. This is in Rajasthan, not far from Udaipur, near a place called Bilwara. And this was at the foothills of the Aravalis, where the aquifer has got very much depleted and hardly any groundwater. But still, there were some rich landlords in that area who were digging bore wells. But the women of that village, they got together and they started doing a gerao against anybody who would dig a bore well in the middle of the night. And then they completely controlled any digging of any wells, either the foothills of the Aravali or even in downstream villages, right up to Bilwara, so that whatever water they were managing to preserve was not getting depleted by somebody else down the line. Now, how do they do it? They exercised rights. I mean, they created a village council where everybody agreed that we will leave the forest, we will do very limited grazing, we will do very limited wood cutting, just barely essential, and wait for the forest to regenerate and restore itself. And there, the FES helped them with choosing certain species in the forest which were native to that place. And until and just basically left it alone till that forest started regenerating, and very, very limited grazing and wood cutting was allowed. And over the years, the forest really became green and the water table in that place started increasing. So much so that in April, exactly around the same month of the year, when we visited there was a trickle of water in the groundwater in the river. And because of that, the communities there were able to eke out at least a crop at that point of time. So this we found not only leads to ecological health because it preserves the environment, it protects the biodiversity, it improves the soil, it improves the moisture, it also creates resilient households, livelihoods. So this is the kind of pattern that is followed. Now, as far as for women is concerned, specifically the focus is on trying to ensure rights to basic needs, ensuring that they have a right in the management and control of the commons, that they are represented in mixed group local institutions, that there is a shorter duration meeting, there are virtual meetings, there are on-site meetings, because their mobility and time is important. At the same time, you want them to participate in all these Gram Sabhas. So we trying to strengthen the women's leadership and try to create plans of these the FES has developed a tablet where they are able to, through satellite imaging, find out where the water sources are and do dug wells and watershed management depending on the water planning they do for the area. And in those areas, the women are then given a greater and greater role in decision making. So this is the way that the approach is done to ensure uh, gender equity. And this has resulted in whatever studies have been shown, resulted in increase in biomass 2.5 times, carbon stock, organic soil carbon, and increase in water availability, and the double crop area, and the increase in livestock assets. So this is the model that has been followed, which actually deals with a number of those issues that I refer to in terms of degradation of the environment and impact of natural resources. I mean, I know it's actually a drop in the ocean, but these are some kind of concrete measures which have been done. We are working across Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Northeast, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, uh, and unfortunately only Yavatmal in Maharashtra and Gujarat all today, and hope that we do and realize the importance of women in the rural areas and the importance of how do we do sustainable management of natural resources so that we have a more equitable and gender fair, equitable, economic world, I should say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thorat madam. Uh,
Yeah, thank you, Usha ji. When this task was given to me, I thank first of all Kolhapur branch for giving me this job. Anadaji, Dipali, Dhanashree, Kalpana Sawant, and the team of Kolhapur branch. To name, you all are so enthusiastic. When the name came with the bio data, and when I searched about Usha ji, I was thinking she's a commerce and whatnot, what she has established. But today, after listening to her lecture, I'm really fascinated how simply and lucidly you have explained the whole thing, your lecture. You started with nature that is degraded or polluted, why it is, and how it is affecting. Basically, how the biomass is decreasing and how it is affecting. And then is also affecting by pollination, the disease affecting plants with a lack of pollinators due to pollution. There is unprecedented drought, and people living in those areas are continuously migrating. Excellent. And there are replaceable products for the future generations, that is to secure life of future generations, you explained. And then you differentiated how it is different in developed countries and the poor countries, and how in India the poor are affected. What are the different factors? That 400 million women farmers are female, and out of that, 13% of them are the landowners. The rest of the ladies do not have the accessibility to ownership, which is a very, very sad part of it. And many other factors you explained, that legally they don't have ownership. Their social, economic, and all these factors you explained very well. And how this females, when we say Bharat Mata or we say Dharti Mata, so the Mata is the protective of all creations. And similarly here, the females are only affected by very small amounts of energy. In that also they try to consume and give the best out of it. The energy consumption to use and make female protective. Females are trying to protect forests also. And in that case, I would love to, as you have given the example of Aravali, similarly in Uttarakhand, the ladies are now very much considering the values and the products which can be formed from pine trees. There was a belief that they had burned the entire forest of pine, and it is women who came forward, and they have again grown that huge area of pine trees, and now wonderful products are being made out of it. Each part of the pine tree is economically important. Thank you,